Hi, I'm Pam and I'm here to talk about retro video games. I was on the Collector Cast podcast recently, and the topic of favorite Mega Man game came up. I didn't have a favorite Mega Man game to share because I've never really played Mega Man. I figured it was time to fill this gap in my gaming repertoire, so this week I played Mega Man 2. Mega Man 2 was developed by Capcom and released for the NES in 1989. Though the first Mega Man, released in '87, hadn't been a commercial hit, the developers went ahead with a sequel as a bit of a passion project. It's a platform game, though I found the jumping aspect, which usually defines platformers, wasn't as challenging or interesting as weapon choice and shooting, but I'll get to that in a bit. In the game, Mega Man is after Dr. Wily, who is in his fortress. Before he can get there, 8 robot masters must be defeated. You can take on the robots in any order you want, and each is preceded by a short level before you get to the boss encounter. The thing about playing and reviewing a game which most people have already played and are very big fans of is that everyone has an opinion. When I asked which order I should tackle the bosses on Twitter, I thought that fights might break out. I ended up going for Metal Man first to get his severely overpowered Metal Blade, though I didn't end up abusing this weapon through my playthrough and actually just used the Mega Buster most of the time. The 8 Robot Master levels are all fairly short, but they're all unique and themed after the boss at the end. Bubble Man's level is underwater, and the most difficult thing is avoiding spiky mines that line the walls. Woodman is, unsurprisingly, in a forest. When you complete the level and defeat the robot, you get its weapon. Each robot is weak to a particular weapon and invulnerable to another. Some of these make sense, like Woodman being weak to fire, but others aren't so intuitive. One thing I really liked about Mega Man is that you have energy meters. One for your health, if it gets depleted, you die, and one for your weapon. If that one runs out, you can no longer use that weapon. I much prefer the health meter method than being killed after only 1 or 2 hits. Items which refill your health and weapon energy can be found throughout levels and can also drop from vanquished foes. One thing that kind of surprised me, at least for the first 8 robot stages, was how little precision was needed and how easy it was to brute force my way through the game. On normal difficulty, energy refilling items drop so often that it doesn't really matter how much you get hit. On Airman's level, for example, I soon learned I didn't have to avoid the drills rising out of platforms. I could just get hit, kill one of the endlessly spawning mobs, and have my health and weapon energy completely refilled. There are a number of areas where energy can be farmed like this. Likewise, a lot of the robot masters could be killed by just spam shooting the appropriate weapon, rather than trying to avoid their attacks. I assume this is not the case when playing on difficult. There are 3 special items you can get to help you travel through the map and build platforms for yourself. These items aren't explained at all in the game, so I went a long time without using them. Then my boyfriend came in the room and made fun of me for trying to jump on disappearing blocks to traverse a lava pit, rather than just using item 2 to fly over it. It was my first time playing, and I had no idea what item 2 did. Once you reach Wily's fortress, though, you're expected to have these items mastered. For a game that's generally classified as a platformer, the jumping parts are not the most challenging or interesting parts of the game. Not that I never fell to my death, but generally I found that part of the game quite easy. Perhaps it's because I'm awesome, or, more likely, it's because the controls are super tight and responsive. Probably the best controls I've ever experienced on the NES. Where the difficulty comes in, especially near the end, is knowing what weapons are the best to use to defeat enemies and dodging attacks. I'd almost classify it more as a run and gun. In the last few levels of the game, there's a bit of puzzle solving. One of my favorite parts of the game involved destroying turrets with crash bombs. You only have enough energy to shoot so many times, so you need to figure out the order in which you need to shoot the turrets and the walls protecting some of them in order to get everything without running out of energy. It took a few tries before I decided I need to get a little more creative with my platform at the beginning. Likewise, right before you finally face Dr. Wily, you need to take on each of the robot masters again. Here you also need to be strategic and try not to waste weapon energy. If you waste your shots and end up with no energy for the final boss fights, you're out of luck. Thankfully, there are unlimited continues, so if you lose all your lives, you only have to restart from the beginning of the stage you're on. Another of my favorite parts of the game was in the Quick Man level, where I had to outrun walls of fire, making careful use of the charge for Time Stopper. The only major complaint I have about Mega Man 2 is how you switch out your weapons and items. You have to pause the game, scroll through 2 pages of different weapons, and select the one you want to use. It's sort of slow and cumbersome, and because of this, I ended up using the default weapon quite a lot. Part of this isn't necessarily an issue with the game itself, as much as it's a limitation of the NES. There's only so many options when the controller has so few buttons. However, from a UI perspective, things like having the weapons listed on a single page or listing their full names would have made things a bit easier. As a newcomer to the series, I don't have the names of the bosses, weapons, and items memorized, so opening the menu just to see a bunch of letters or numbers to choose from isn't particularly helpful. Everything else about the game is pretty great though. I can't talk about Mega Man without mentioning the music, which is amazing. Some of the best music on the NES for sure. Likewise, the visuals are good. There's a ton of variety in the level design, the types of enemies you face, and the attacks used by the robot masters. The game really never gets repetitive or boring. So I'm pretty sure everyone else already knows this, but Mega Man 2 is great. The gameplay is really fun, it's got a rockin' soundtrack, super tight controls, and even a little bit of puzzling. I'm glad I finally played this. That's all for now. Likes, shares, and comments are always appreciated. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.